Thanks, Steve. I'm talking a lot about politics there, obviously, so let's get the government perspective. Here's Tricia Hayes, Director General Roads, Devolution and Monitoring at the DfT.
Thank you very much, everybody. I was really delighted to be invited to talk to you this morning. I find myself with limited wriggle room in what to talk about over the next 7 minutes, partly because I've just been preceded by as eminent a panel as you could ever wish to see in any conference anywhere, also because my own minister is about to stand up in a hall just over there in 7 minutes' time, and if there were anything interesting to be announced, I would let him do it rather than do it now, because I quite like my job and I'm quite keen to keep it. But what I thought I could add to the conversation so far is a few reflections on kind of some of the things I've heard other panelists say this morning, and then maybe take us to a slightly different place, look ahead a little to the environment that we're planning for in a RIS2 world and some of the things that are likely to shape our collective thinking in the work going forward. So kind of first a few reflections on what I've heard so far. So I think what you've got so far this morning is a pretty good picture of the first year of Highways England as an organisation, 18 months in. And I think you've heard from Peter and from Jim in particular, a kind of strong track record of achievement. I think Jim was pretty clear in his presentation that a year and a half in, you wouldn't expect Highways England to be a fully formed organisation. It's not a grown-up just yet, but then nor is it a baby. I guess that makes it a teenager. And for any of you who have teenagers, you'll know that one of the things that characterises the relationship of a teenager with its family is that the parent just wishes the teenager would phone home a bit more often, and the teenager just wishes the parent would get off its back. Now, that doesn't necessarily characterise the whole of my working relationship with Jim, but nor is it totally unfamiliar as a model. And I'd like to just get out of this slightly tricky spot that I've now put myself into by paying tribute to Jim, who has achieved a huge amount as Chief Executive of Highways England in his first 18 months. And I hope, Jim, that we continue to grow up together. I think you've also heard from Steve, who I'm embarrassed to say I've known since 1992. Pause for you all to think that I'm younger than I look. Or no, that I'm older than I look? Yes, that I'm older than I look. He has done a good job for me in that I don't need to repeat the government's positive record on investment in the transport sector. But I think that even had Steve not done that job for me, you wouldn't have had to hear it. You would have felt it from the room. It was very, very noticeable to me, walking into this event this morning, just what a positive buzz there is among you as a group of people, among you as the supply chain for the highway sector. And that is, for me, who's been knocking around this area for quite a long time, that feels like a really, really big, strong positive about the way that we're working together at the minute. But what will the future hold, and how will we need to use that buzz and mobilise it as we move away from the kind of short-term questions that we've been talking a little bit about this morning into thinking a bit more about the longer term of our road and transport networks more generally? And I just wanted to tease you to have a conversation with us about three things. One is skills, one is integration, and one is futures. So skills first. I would really encourage any of you who can to go away and go and hear Terry Morgan, who's here this morning and who's been a really lead player in helping us to think about transport sector skills. For us, I think that making the transport industry a more attractive place to work for all people who live in the UK is an absolutely mission-critical part of our industrial strategy. And I have to express just a little bit of personal disappointment to be turning up to a highways event about 5 years after the last one that I've done, and to be looking out yet again at a sea of middle-aged white male faces. I think we can do better than that, and I'm really, really keen that we continue to work together to do it. The second challenge I'd like to throw out to you is around integration. There is a huge amount of activity going on across all our transport networks, road and rail, and I think there's a real challenge to us to start to plan that integration at a much more strategic level so that we have a real sense of place when we're doing transport planning and thinking about transport investment. That's key at a strategic level, but it's also key at a tactical level. Just think about the cumulative impact of the busy road, rail, high-speed rail investment programs and how that will feel to people who are using our networks over the next few years. We need to make sure that we're being really, really smart in how we're managing, communicating, sharing, planning all that activity. The final challenge is one about futures. So since I came back into the roads world about 6 months ago, there have been some really fun conversations going on about motoring in the future. Motoring will be decarbonised, it will be connected, there will be different models for owning cars. People won't have these vehicles sitting outside their houses anymore, they will have mobility as a service contracts. There are some very, very, very interesting ideas, attractive futures, pictures being painted for us by the thought leaders in the highway sector and in the transport sector more generally. And I'd be very, very interested in having a conversation with you about what does this mean for us, not just for RIS2, but for the period beyond RIS2. I don't see that this is going to change the world by 2020-21, but change is coming. And I think we collectively have a challenge in working out how we're going to respond to it. Thank you very much.